Welcome everyone to this webinar, the Research Data Services Landscape. How do you start and where does your library fit in? My name is Javier Martinez. I'm the program specialist at the National Center for Data Services. And joining me here as a panelist is Justin De La Cruz, the Associate Director of NCDS. So the general objective for this webinar is to talk about data services and how to get started with it, both from the perspective of those in libraries and also from those interested in working in data services. Upon completion, attendees will be able to describe the common types of research data services offered in health sciences libraries, explain the current trends and challenges in data services, and also determine next steps for their practice. So the agenda for this webinar is we will start with an overview of the different types of data services. Then we will talk about the benefits of having data services in your library. We will also be talking about current trends in the landscape of data services. And then finally, we'll talk about some next steps. There will be 2 pauses for questions after agenda items 2 and 3. Let us know if you have any technical issues. We'll be happy to assist. And we do encourage everyone to stay muted unless you're going to ask a question. I believe everyone should be muted. We do that to minimize some of the background noise. So what is research data services? Currently, data services can be seen as two fairly distinct tracks. One is data management and curation, which deals with things like file naming conventions, data organization, metadata, sharing data through repositories, and data discovery. They are also working within and influencing institutional funder and publisher policies around data sharing, data storage, and data ownership. There's another track having to do with data science and data literacy that deals with skills for analyzing data, including programming languages, data cleaning, and data visualization. They are also working within and influencing institutional policies around permitted software, storage solutions, and computing. It's important to know that the broader environment around data and research is constantly evolving, and this will, of course, affect the support services needed. So while the idea of these 2 distinct tracks makes sense right now, that may change. Another area in which many data service librarians have provided support is scientific reproducibility. One aspect of reproducibility is being able to run an experiment with the same methodology as the previous experiment and guess results that are not the same as, but are consistent with the original experiment. Another aspect is to be able to take the same data, run the same analysis, and get the same results. Reproducibility is an area that encompasses both tracks of the data management side and the data science side. So, for example, good data management will result in well-documented data, which will facilitate more efficient data cleaning. It's important to know that while these 2 types of data support have points of interaction, the skill sets for these tracks are very different, and many data librarians will stick to one of these tracks. Those providing introductory data services, particularly as a new service for a library, may offer informational level services for both tracks, such as a LibGuide or on data sources, data tools, and data management tips. However, as our knowledge deepens, our services start aligning with one of these 2 tracks. So how does research data services differ from health sciences libraries? Once librarians begin to develop deeper knowledge, or as data services departments and staff levels grow, roles become more clearly defined and greater levels of services are offered, including consultations and partnerships. Some areas of data services require more focus for health sciences librarians, and this slide contains some examples of those areas. So they can be areas encompassing privacy and de-identification of personal health information. So it can also include secure storage and use of HIPAA-compliant tools like REDCap, supporting researchers working to deposit in biomedical discipline-specific repositories like NIH-supported repositories, increased emphasis on data use agreements to protect human subjects and intellectual property, accessing and use of protected data such as EHR data, and then implications of data ethics for bioethics. So let's look at how these levels are laid out. So you can see the levels of services here. Offering data services is not an all or none proposition. There are a range of types of support depending on both how much time can be dedicated to the data work in your library and then also how much expertise the people providing the services have. This is an example of how data services can evolve as more staff, effort, and resources are allocated for it. So the first step might be taking on outreach to your research community to raise awareness on issues around open science and open data, policies around data sharing, and anything else data related that may affect them. This is a good way to learn about these issues and to begin to make the connection between the library and data within your institution. Not all institutions and researchers may make that connection, so they may not understand that the library is a resource for them when they are working with data. So if they have a question related to it, they may not think of the library as a first place to go. As knowledge gets deeper, you can begin to create resources such as research guides, which requires more time and more expertise. It also provides an opportunity for a librarian newly providing data services to do more of a deep dive to understand what resources would most benefit their community. This is an asynchronous activity, so it provides time and space to grow more knowledgeable in and comfortable with this area for somebody new to providing these services or a library new to providing these services. Education, whether that means developing synchronous or asynchronous activities, is another step up in terms of both expertise and time commitment required. Um, this is a point at which a specialization in one of the two tracks, data science or data management, may be warranted. Both are wide-ranging areas which benefit from a deeper focus. While it's not impossible to pursue both areas, the expectation that someone would do so is, in most cases, unrealistic. Data management consultations with researchers, labs, or departments will likely involve questions that are specific to a discipline or a data type, going beyond the information that arises in an introductory course. So it makes sense to have the basics well in hand before taking on these types of consultations. While there may still be questions you can't address in the moment, you will at least have the grounding to know how to approach finding an answer. Similarly, consultations on data cleaning, analysis, and visualization may involve questions involving specific data types or more advanced features of tools or programming languages that would be difficult to manage without having a solid foundation. However, there are pathways to developing this area of consultation. Oftentimes, we will request someone submit a form with their questions and all of their supporting information to allow the librarian time to research the question and potentially come up with solutions or reach out to other support offices in the institution who may also enhance the consultation support of that meeting. The final level is infrastructure. So this includes infrastructure projects. They're not generally something that can be done by an individual. They typically require a team with deep expertise in data issues, access, discovery, sharing, etc., and with technical expertise of those data issues. Projects of this nature can take months or even years sometimes to develop. For a library to consider taking on a major infrastructure project, their data services work should be fairly mature, as institutional buy-in is a critical aspect to the success of these types of projects. So, now that you have a little bit of understanding of the areas of data services and how to grow within data services as knowledge deepens, this is a version of the research lifecycle and the services that may be provided within each step. There are many variants of this, but the main takeaway is that there are data services needs throughout the research process, and the levels of service we just went through can be applied to any of these areas. So it doesn't need to be a blanket over data services. Perhaps a focus on your library can be one of the areas or multiple of the areas, depending on how many resources you can allocate for them and the priorities also of your institution. So why? Why would someone provide data services in libraries? Why would someone take on this role within their library or hire for roles within um, sorry, hire for roles for data services within a library? The growth of data services in libraries is a reflection of the evolution of what is recognized as a valid academic output in biomedical research. When this is confined to books, conference papers, and journal articles, services such as services such as searching, systematic review, collaborations, cataloging, and content management are ways that library can support these academic outputs. However, data sets have increasingly been accepted as an important type of academic output and have been accepted as an output that can be included in an NIH BioSketch since 2015. So datasets are much more complex than journal articles or books in many respects. They can consist of different data types, different file types, including proprietary file types. The size may run to terabytes, petabytes, and beyond, and they may lack the necessary metadata to be reused. So the support needed to ensure the preservation, discovery, and reuse of data is correspondingly much more varied. Some of the ways that datasets can be supported as an academic output is by providing training and assistance to ensure that data is collected, analyzed, and documented in ways that ensure that the resulting dataset will be fair. And that is an acronym for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Software has also become more recognized as an important academic contribution. Supporting software as an academic output serves two purposes. First, research reproducibility requires that any software used in data collection, cleaning, analysis, or visualization is fully documented. Second, that documentation is needed so that others can use the software, thus increasing its impact. There's a lot that's going on in terms of making data available, making quality metadata, and having things being machine actionable, as well as supporting software and even making research software fair as well. So the role of libraries should be to support preservation and access to all academic outputs, even as their nature evolves, rather than only just the outputs that were traditionally accepted at a given point in time. So that's a quick overview of kind of the history of research data services and some of the roles within research data services. So let's see if we have any questions. Is this role restricted to academic libraries, or can hospital librarians take on such roles? I would say that data work is not necessarily restricted just to academic libraries. There is plenty of ways to work with data. So you could probably find a way to take on a similar role, if not parts of this role or the whole role as a hospital librarian. Um, but I think a point of this conversation is that a lot of that will depend on the priorities of your institution. So I think I wouldn't use the word restricted for the role. Um, I would just say that the scope of the role for a hospital librarian may be a little bit different from an academic librarian, depending on the priorities of the institution. Right. Yeah. The priorities of the institution are, like Justin just said, also the needs of the community that you're working with. So see if there are people doing research or maybe they are publishing and you need to keep track of that. That's also data work. All right. I don't think I see any other questions at this point. So let's go ahead and move on to the current landscape. Research Data Services, or RDS, have become a critically important topic for academic libraries. R1 universities, so those are doctoral universities with very high level of research activity, and others in that category um, have a range between 0 to 10 data librarians, with an average of about 2 data librarians per institution. This information was gathered in 2019 from 131 R1 universities. Our expectation is that this number has grown pretty significantly, so more research needs to be done to assess the current status of data services. The State of Open Data 2022 found that 72% of researchers would rely on internal institutional resources to make their data more open. Researchers are looking for and relying on those internal support networks. So having a dedicated data services team, committee, or librarian on campus as a resource can be very beneficial. When we look at all institution types, from two-year colleges, bachelor and master programs, as well as doctoral colleges, we see that more libraries are getting involved in data services. An ACRL choice paper in 2019 found that in 2012, 60% of the responding libraries said their library was not involved in RDS. And by 2016, just 44.1%, or 82 of the responding libraries were not involved in any RDS. So you see that number is decreasing. More and more libraries are starting or expanding data services. So services like consulting on metadata standards, data management plans, offering technical support, and participating in data policy and data policy development, sorry, have all increased since 2011. And we only see that number and that pattern growing. Most data librarian jobs are at universities with higher research activity. However, a growing number of libraries of all types, including public libraries, are seeking to provide data services. In addition, those jobs aren't solely about data or data skills. Like most library jobs, outreach, making inroads, making connections are a big part of the job. There may be some resistance, so having good connections and building upon those will help people see the library in that data role. You may have the best data resources around, but you still need to make those connections across campus and get buy-in from faculty and researchers in order to be successful. General data management, data repositories, and curation are some of the more common responsibilities, but it really depends on the institution and how data services would fit into the library's mission and work, as well as how it fits into the needs for your institution. Many data librarian positions still look for traditional LIS skills like instruction and public services. So we think this just goes to highlight that data skills can always be learned. They don't necessarily, so a data librarian doesn't necessarily need a hard science or data intensive background. Defining data librarianship is an article that offers more information about this. So in 2018, that article surveyed data librarians on what skills they thought were most important in their roles. Soft skills like communication, building relationships, writing, and presenting were among the highest ranked skills. More technical skills like programming languages, data visualizations, using statistical software were ranked much lower. Technical skills all ranked technical skills all ranked similarly, with about 30 to 50% of survey respondents saying that technical skills were very important. This shows that there's not one specific technical skill that's universally needed, and that data librarians often have a variety of technical data skills. The technical skills a data librarian needs will vary by institution. Having the aptitude and willingness to learn is probably more important than knowing a specific software or a specific coding language. Again, much of what a data librarian does will be outreach and networking with researchers, so people skills and communication skills will often be just as important. So let's look at the trend that we are calling the great U-turn of 2022. While data services initially focused on data management and curation, technical skills in coding, data literacy, cleaning, and visualization became progressively more in demand. However, the release and implementation of the NIH Data Management and Sharing Policy prompted a need for more research data management support, including in libraries that weren't providing data support whatsoever initially. Researchers wanted more help with data management, but coding and technical skills are still in demand. In August 2022, the Nelson Memo addressed free, immediate public access to federally funded research. That put an emphasis on open access and fair data principles. So there continues to be a push for open data practices, and that needs to be incorporated into research data support. However, there's all kinds of data. So there's a need for all kinds of data librarians and data services. As we show from our visual here, that's a constant push and pull in terms of what is being prioritized. More funders are also starting to require that data be shared openly. Many publishers, such as PLOS and Nature, they ask researchers to share their data, with many others moving more to support open data practices. There are efforts across Europe, Latin America, and China that are also moving towards more open data practices. So this change is taking place globally. The State of Open Data in 2022 notes that the NIH continues to invest in a robust data ecosystem, one where its policies and activities keep pace with evolving scientific technologies, opportunities, and stakeholder expectations. And the NIH also partnered with organizations like DataCite, the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology, and the Data Curation Network to support fair and open data. Then the NIH Data Management and Sharing Policy is one of the steps that they took towards more open data practices. That is to say, for the time being, open data and open science isn't going anywhere. The need for skilled librarians that can speak to these topics and support open data at all institutes will continue to increase in the coming years. So now let's talk about some next steps for librarians interested in going into data services and next steps for library leaders looking to recruit data librarians or begin those roles within their libraries. First, we will talk about the different specialties that data librarians can pursue. So what might a data management librarian do? If we remember earlier, I mentioned there are two tracks in data services. Let's start with the data management track. The titles and roles will vary in this track, of course, but in general, data management librarians advise on data organization, they curate data to be shared, they develop metadata to maximize discovery, they teach research data management, they also assist in writing or reviewing data management plans, and they assist in identifying appropriate repositories for data sharing. Finally, they teach and or consult on use of data collection software. A data science and data literacy librarian would teach and offer consultations in use of data, including coding, surveys, and data cleaning. So those could include services like coding, like using R or Python, use of data collection tools like REDCap or Qualtrics, data cleaning, which may include coding or use of programs like OpenRefine, use of data analytic tools like SPSS, NVivo, or MATLAB. It may also include assistance in creating data visualizations through either coding languages or programs like Tableau, and also assistance with how to perform statistics within a particular programming environment. So as you can see, these responsibilities focus on working with tools and languages rather than conducting data science. So because of this, data science librarians are not likely to teach statistical analysis, so which test to run, or research design, like advising on validity, power, or generalizability. They are not likely to teach machine learning techniques, and they are also not likely to teach anything that requires deep domain-specific knowledge. That's in general. There may be some differences depending on the priorities at your institution. But as you can see, just this list is a hefty set of responsibilities for one person. Since that's because most data librarians, they don't have expertise across all of these systems, and many of these tools update and change almost constantly. Therefore, it is best to have an idea of what is in greatest use and demand within an institution in order to support those. For example, one institution may have researchers who more frequently use R, Question Pro, and Tableau, with a smaller but significant percentage using Stata and Power BI. So it would be best to hire up develop expertise in those areas. Whereas for another institutions, where researchers are heavily using both R and Python as well as REDCap, the data librarian skills will need to be focused on those tools. It's important to know that Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, tends to be its own concentration, where some librarians have GIS services as their central or sole responsibility. That's because it requires a lot of expertise and knowledge in that area. This is something you may want to consider along with the needs of your institution. What else do data librarians and staff do? Now, the models for providing data services are very different at each institution, and there may be additional responsibilities that are part of the data services staff, or it may be distributed. So helping people find data, encouraging open data sharing, and teaching about reproducibility may be responsibilities of people like the library liaisons and informationists within their assigned disciplines. This is a distributed model. The benefit to the distributed model is that liaisons are extending upon their knowledge of the literature, instruments, and other research support databases and tools. They're essentially just adding data into the mix of their responsibilities. In addition, they will also likely be able to develop strong abilities in the access of data, since they are focused within one or more set list of disciplines. They may also have much more awareness and deeper knowledge about what data exists within their discipline. And they may also have a deeper understanding of opportunities for bringing in a data librarian, as well as what and how much data librarians would be able to do. So these are some tips in case you want to develop someone within your institution to become a data librarian. First, identify someone with an interest, a person who has already sought out training on working with data. Maybe they have attended a conference, or they're already working with researchers in this capacity. You want to provide ample professional development support so that they can continue to grow their skills. You also want to provide support in making inroads across the institution and connecting them with stakeholders to place the library in that data role and increase awareness of the library as a resource for working with data. Consider the value of different backgrounds. The librarians in your institution may already be working with data in different ways. They may be doing some text mining if they work in humanities and have a background in if they have a background in humanities and computer science. They may be already working with GIS. If they have a background in social sciences, humanities, and urban planning. They may be have a background in business analytics, and they are using data related to the use of library subscriptions. They may also be using large open data sources if they have a background in computer science and engineering. So data cannot just be, what's important here is that data cannot just be an add-on to their responsibilities. You have to think of things you can take away so that they can focus on data services. That would give them time to grow into the role and provide and establish, so you can provide them clear goals to accomplish. You can establish them together. So if you are hiring for a data librarian, watch out for the biggest pitfall. The biggest piece of advice we can provide is to not write a kitchen sink job description. Think about whether you want a data librarian, you want a research impact, or an assessment librarian. What is it you actually want and need? Think about how fair it would be for one person to have all of these roles. As you consider this, also think about what specific foci make sense for your institution and the needs of your institution when you drop and then you drop a job description based on all of this, all that information. So going back to the kitchen sink job description, here's an example of a kitchen sink job. We have bolded some of the more noteworthy aspects of this job description. We have included some of the general characteristics of this type of job description. So what are some of the characteristics of a kitchen sink post? Multiple responsibilities spanning both data services tracks as well as other responsibilities. So we see data management, data curation, and preservation, as well as support with data analysis, creation, and visualization. They're also teaching data literacy and data management. They're also staffing the service desk for 12 hours per week, and they're serving as the subject liaison for for different library disciplines. They have a large list of required technical skills in software, including R, Python, Power BI, or Tableau. This job posting also has no salary listed, or sometimes the salary may not be commensurate with responsibilities. And it is also unclear how the position works within the library, or the position may be in an ill-fitting department. That's also possible. In this case, you may see that this position is part of the reference department, which may or may not be made for that role. For your own library, you can obviously make an assessment and decide where a data librarian would make more sense within your organization. So let's switch over to an example of a good job posting. Some of the characteristics that we see is that it has a clearly outlined scope, and that this one is the data archivist. So obviously, this falls very well within the data management and curation track, specifically focusing on archiving data. This also includes the reporting line that the position, establishing that the position reports to the university archivist, which makes sense, and the director of the University Digital Conservancy. That also makes sense. It also includes required experience that is relevant to the position, and the salary is posted for the job, which makes it a little bit more competitive for applicants. As for a second good job example, again, you can see this is another one, there's a clearly outlined scope. So this is for a geospatial librarian focused on supporting GIS and geospatial data services. There's departmental information, which establishes what has been done and where this position fits in. So you can see here, they will collaborate with other members of the data cooperative and research engagement to develop strategies and partnerships and work with members of the library's technical services and support department. We can see the required technical qualifications align with the position. They are in a laundry list. So people providing GIS services will be familiar with use of Python and GIS. And JSON files and so on are used within GIS software. Again, the salary is posted for this position. That's a good thing. And so you might ask, how can we hire someone so specific when we are just starting and need to cover the breadth of data services? Our recommendation is to determine if the services would be better offered using a distributed model, which I mentioned before, or whether there are specific initial needs a data librarian can focus on first. If so, hire for those needs at this time, and then consider having a plan for providing additional data services as they are needed. So we have talked about developing a librarian already in your institution. Here are some tips for bringing in a librarian from outside. Your data services librarian or team will never be able to meet all the needs of the institution. Think about what makes sense in relation to the services already provided across campus and in the library, as well as the skills you'll need for someone in that role. Number two, consider the market. Data skills are transferable, so consider that they're being considering what they're being paid in industry, and you don't necessarily have to pay that, but consider that anecdotally we are seeing more and more of these positions and getting reports of small pools of applicants. So think about all the ways that you can compete, such as pay, but also benefits and other ways of attracting good candidates, like work from home arrangements, more control of their schedule. Make your budget for continuing education, provide time and financial support um, for your data librarians, especially if you are um, developing a data librarian right at home. Number three, make space and build opportunities. Make a way for them to be successful. Make connections with institutional leaders, working across campus to promote data services. You can work with other institutional leaders like deans, associate vice presidents, provosts, and so on. Work towards improving barriers, such as policies again going against data sharing, and consider tenure requirements and other higher level factors that can help those providing data services from the ground level to be more successful, right? What are those requirements? How can you assist them in meeting those? Be flexible. People can come from many disciplines to be a data librarian. So keep in mind that skills are transferable. If they have the basic building blocks, they can grow. So that can mean going from knowing R to teaching Python. They may try certain services that are not well received and need to move into another service, continuing to build buy-in maybe over several years. Be aware of what is more needed for your institution and communicate that to those you are hiring or have hired so that they can be successful and grow into the role. This can also help them understand some of the barriers that they may run into. Also, integrate them into the existing ecosystem. Data librarians are successful working in an integrated environment with liaisons, specialists, etc. Introduce them to leaders, different stakeholders, library staff, and make strong connections there. This may also allow you to bundle library services. So for example, open access can be grouped with open data in your brochures when you talk about repositories. Think about how you can capitalize on the successes in the library where data services can be added. Maybe you have a project with a researcher. You realize they are working with data, so you may recommend for the data librarian to come in and give a presentation about the services they provide. That way, you can integrate your data library into your existing library ecosystem. There are, so when it comes to challenges in starting data services, there are limitations to the role. So that may have to do with scalability. What is a person actually capable of taking on considering the time that they have? And if they need to work on a project, what are the expectations and requirements for that project? There may also be limitations to the skills that each person has. There are also challenges when it comes to authority. For example, researchers may not see the librarian as an authority even when they are just communicating a policy such as the NIH data management and sharing policy. So that runs into a shoot the messenger problem. All or much of this is on-the-job learning for many librarians, even those specializing in data. So that may be a challenge, and you may also run into a challenge when it comes to getting people to associate the library with data as an ongoing task. So where to start? Now that you know all about research data services and the potential areas where libraries can go into, particularly if they're starting or expanding, if you want to know where can you start, particularly if you want to become a data librarian and grow in the skills. We recommend the MLA Data Services Specialization. You can check out their website with more information about that. Um, these are the kinds of accomplishments that you receive upon completing the data services specialization. Almost everything that we provide that's data related out of NNLM contributes to this. It is a great place for people to get started and understand what is happening with data services and growing their skills. Like I mentioned before, all of the offerings listed here contribute to MLA's data services specialization, including both of our full courses, so our fundamental courses, um, which are fundamentals of health science, research data management, and health data science. Um, our fundamentals of health data science course is currently ongoing, and if we have any plans to offer that again in the future, we would stay tuned and see if we have any announcements about that. Our webinars, we also have webinars on data management plans using the DMP tool. We also have an overview of the NIH data management and sharing policy that you can attend, and you can register through the NNLM website. And finally, we have some on-demand modules about research data management, data sharing, supporting open science, and then also data ethics. We also have some data resources like data pathways, the glossary, a repository finding, and then there's the NIH data management and sharing policy toolkit. So thank you so much for that. And now we'll open it up to some more questions. I returned to school and obtained a master's in research, measurement, and statistics. I wonder if degree assistance could be a benefit in job descriptions. Yeah, I would definitely say, I would definitely encourage you if you are hiring, if you're looking to hire a librarian, that you include some information there about professional opportunities for professional development as a benefit. I think that's really attractive as part of a job description or a job posting. So if you have the opportunity to do that, I would definitely encourage you to use that as a way to attract data librarians. It can be a tough market, so yes. Yes, it says Tom here saying this was very helpful. Thank you. I will look at my hospital and see if there are any potential needs. Our research department likely has someone who handles this. Yes, that's a very real possibility, and maybe that person who's handling who is in a data librarian role within the research department is actually looking to connect with other departments. So see if maybe they need help and take it from there. Yes, libraries may be in the position of offering some services, but oftentimes are navigators to others in the institution. That's absolutely right. And so that's a way to, that's one of the ways that you can start data services. It's what we mentioned. You can start by providing information, outreach, resources, and start connecting people to ways in the institution. That's also why it's so important for data librarians to um, get access to those connections and make those connections so that they can hopefully also guide researchers as they work within the institutional environment. You make data less scary. That's great. Love that.